like Rajdeep, I must start by saluting the indefatigable spirit of Dr. Anurag Batra and Ruhail, Priyanka, and the entire team, because really to remain believers year after year is to show an optimism that not all of us feel every day at all times. So I think you keep us going, you help us be believers. So thank you, Anurag and team, for what you do. I'm supposed to speak about technology, the rapidly changing world around us, the fact that the rug might quite literally be pulled beneath our feet because of the rapid pace at which technology is changing how we are meant to do our job or sought to do our job. But before I get into that, I just want to pick up a little bit from where Rajdeep left. He spoke about the shrinking space within mainstream media, how more and more people are actually exiting or maybe forced to exit to start their own platforms. As somebody who did that about 4.5 years ago, I can tell you that you're not free from the pressures of hyperpolarization just because you leave one medium and enter the other, right? So if you're under this romanticized idea that tomorrow you can leave your organization and then just start from your basement and start broadcasting and suddenly journalism's health will be restored, it isn't quite a quick fix formula which is as simple as that. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is exactly the hyperpolarization that I think we must spend some time discussing today. Somebody like me left mainstream television for 3 reasons. One, I had done it for 20+ years, and I felt the decline was coming. I could see the decline of television news coming. And one thing I always want to ask Rajdeep every year, and he always leaves before I can ask him that, is that, how does he remain within the system that he so honestly holds a mirror up to? Because certainly I couldn't remain in that system. Like, I found it absolutely suffocating. And therefore, I walked out. And when I walked out, I was told that I was crazy, that I should just make my peace with the system, that I should just accept whatever compromised sort of version of television news that there was. And I felt like I couldn't do that. And I always want to ask him, why he has chosen to make peace with the structures that he so obviously feels uncomfortable with. So maybe Rajdeep will answer that one day. But to carry on, here's the problem. There are 3 problems that face all of us, irrespective of which medium we are in today. One, hyperpolarization, because our audience has begun to love a bias. Where I will agree with Rajdeep is that the same person, the same journalist can be attacked by all sides in the same week. And sometimes for the same story. So for the same story, I spent 20 years reporting from Jammu and Kashmir, you can be called an anti-national and you can be called a jingoist. For the same story in the same program that you do, you can be called Godi and Darbari. At Mojo story, our motto was na chamcha na morcha. Because we said that we don't want to suck up to power. That's certainly not our job. We have to hold power to account. But we do not believe that the counter to holding power to account is to become political activists on the other side. We remain believers in what some might today call old-fashioned journalism. Let the facts speak and give voice to those who do not have a voice. I think those should be our twin guiding lights. But we are in an ecosystem where those of us who are not old and thick-skinned, I have seen younger people actually leave social media or modify what they say on social media because they seek approval of one camp or the other. And that, to me, is the biggest change that hyperpolarization has brought across mediums. The need for approval. The need for approval and the need for access. Because so many people have unfortunately structured their journalism on getting access to so-called important people, you get a bit unnerved when they don't give you that interview, when they don't come for your conclave, when they don't want to get, as Rajdeep mentioned, photographed with you, when they want to look over your shoulder, when they want to talk to you privately but not in public. And some people are impacted by this. Some journalists are actually impacted by this. And to them, I want to say something I posted on my Instagram feed recently that I think we should all remember. Why did we become journalists? And there's a little cartoon of an elephant sitting on a chair with a little mouse on the other chair, and the elephant is saying to the little mouse, maybe it never was about standing with the great, but sitting with the broken. How many of us are sitting with the broken today? because that is actually what journalism should be about. Not about your access to the powerful, not about the interviews that you score, not about, how many retweets that you get. No. And the answer to brazen, blatant sycophancy, I'm afraid, does not lie in becoming the political opposition. That's somebody else's job. That's not your job. Your job is to not look over your shoulder and tell your story as you believe that story's truth to be. So the first challenge is indeed hyperpolarization. The second challenge is the changing, rapid nature of technology. Now, technology presents you with a Charles Dickens like it was the best of times and the worst of times scenario. So let me, like Rajdeep, start with the good news first. The good news is that I do a live streaming show on my platform every evening at 5 o'clock. When I did the same show at NDTV, it took a crew of 15 people, the PCR, the production control room, and the line editor, the director, the output editor, all of it in a composite set of numbers was 15 people. I can do that show on most days with 2 people. There are days that I have done that show with 1 person, and there are days when my entire team is off and I still feel like doing a show, and I have now mastered the technology that I can do it myself. And when I say about this show, my shows don't look like a Zoom. They're not like a webinar. They have graphics and sound bites and data and shorts, and if you looked at it, you would not recognize the difference between a broadcast medium and the digital medium, because we try and keep it professional. We try and keep it to the highest standards of production. So these are the great opportunities that have been enabled by technology. But here's the downside. While entry barriers have fallen, and today all you need is a skill for storytelling, a visual eye, and a comfort with technology to be a storyteller, the downside is that this is changing so quickly that apart from deepfakes and fake news, I'm afraid that we are all going to have to do 2 things. We're all going to have to upskill, and we're all going to have to unlearn. Please note that I did not say learn, but unlearn. Some of us of a certain generation who've been doing this forever, the core skill that we have of storytelling, that will always be required. That skill will always be needed. But to be wedded to one kind of storytelling, one kind, when you live in an age, not just of polarization, but in an age of influencers, right? You live in an age where your political class wants to talk to influencers because they're speaking to a generation that classic journalism isn't speaking to. So you're being a journalist at a time when people who've probably never stepped out of their podcast studios are very successful brands. Now you can do 2 things. You can either whine about it, resent them, or you can learn your own version of contemporary storytelling. You can either look down on the Instagram generation, or you can be part of it but not lose yourself. So how do you remain authentic to who you are? Don't become somebody else. But how do you remain agile in this system? So unlearn. Don't be wedded to the old way of doing things. There is no ego, and there should be no ego. And I'm saying this as somebody who is hitting 30 years in this profession. There should be no ego in saying, I used to do it this way, I now need to learn to do it another way. There should be no ego in saying, you know what, as a multimedia editor, I want to learn how to do my own camera, I want to learn how to put up a light if I have to, I want to learn how to make a graphic, I want to learn how to make a thumbnail, because guess what? The media is moving rapidly towards 1-person composite units. That is what technology is doing. And the bad news is that if we do not upskill and we do not unlearn, there are a host of professional jobs, I'm afraid it's coming sooner than we think, that are going to become redundant. You can already shoot an entire movie on your iPhone. You can already do basic editing use in Shorts, and you can already use artificial intelligence for everything from generating videos to editing them, to subclipping them, to transcribing them, to adding B-roll, right? We know this. Each one of us knows this in this room. So upskill and unlearn. Otherwise, technology will not be your friend. It will be a disruptor in a bad way. But technology can be your friend. So get ahead of technology. Make technology your friend. And the last challenge, which we haven't spoken about enough, I mean, there was a broad reference. I think Anurag made the reference to how much money is going to IPL and how much money is actually being shared between the rest of the ecosystem, is revenue. Newspapers depend on government. Television depends on big business or government and the market. And the internet now depends on clicks. And I think once on this platform, I said we moved from the tyranny of the state, when media was government-owned, to the tyranny of the market, when advertisers and your ratings drove how many sponsors you got, to the tyranny of the algorithm. The clickbait headline, the need to say ki kaun mere link pe click karega. In a saturated market, in a fragmented media market, these are challenges. And that is in turn leading to a kind of hyperpolarization. Right? Because people feel the more partisan I am, the more biased I am, the more provocative I am, the more controversial I am, the more likely somebody will click me. That desperate hunger, dependence on the click is a very worrying trend in media today. I do believe that what matters and what will remain at the end, no matter how many platforms or jobs artificial intelligence takes away, is the relationship between you and your audience. I think we stand here today on the graveyard. I'm sorry to not be a believer in the way that the people before me have been. I think we stand here today on the graveyard of news as we once knew it. Let us please be honest. If I were an 18-year-old today in college and I looked at television channels in the way that they are, I would not have become a journalist. And I love being a journalist. That if this was the media on broadcast forums that I was exposed to, hate-mongering, shrill, shouty, hardly any ground reports, hardly any voice to the voiceless, I would not have become a journalist. So I think it's time to acknowledge that we stand on the graveyard, on the debris of a certain kind of journalism. And the question before us is, what are we going to build on top of that debris? What is the new building going to look like? Can it contain authenticity while still having the agility to adapt to a technology that is coming at you like a tsunami? And we try and do this in our own small way, but I can't say to you, I'm not going to be a big pretender and say to you, we have all the answers, we have cracked the revenue model, we have cracked how to, use Snapchat and Discord and Instagram, we have cracked how to, at 52 to talk to somebody who's 22. We have to acknowledge that things are changing. And if we don't acknowledge that, we can keep pretending, keep going on as if nothing has changed, but I'm sorry, everything has changed. And now the challenge before us is, how do you become somebody that your viewer trusts? It all boils down to trust. Even if they abuse you. I've noticed something very interesting. Like sometimes you go to these events and you'll meet somebody and they'll come and they'll be very friendly with you and they'll say, I'm so-and-so, and you won't kind of know them. And they'll say, don't you remember we had this big argument on Twitter? And I'll be like, acha, and you blocked me. Can you unblock me? And they'll be absolutely convivial in real life. This has happened to me on multiple occasions. I've stopped blocking. I now don't block unless there's hate speech or abuse. I just mute because I've learned over the years to not get into social media arguments. But what it does tell you is that as long as your audience is engaging with you, even if it's to disagree with you, it's engaged with you. It's because they take you seriously enough to even pick on you. It's because everything is not about praise. Sometimes people have reactions because they come from their own positions of bias, they're seeking confirmation bias, they're seeking for you to reinforce what they think, and when you don't, they call you biased. But you shouldn't give up on that moment. You should say, this is what I believe. Let's agree to disagree. As long as you engage with me in a civil way, I will keep talking to you. And that is my philosophy. I will allow all opinions on my platform as long as they are not sexist, as long as they don't slur another community, they're not hate speech, and they're not patently false. You can't have somebody saying something patently false and not stop them. You can't have somebody saying patently hateful and not stop them. But my belief, old-fashioned as it is, and I will then start winding down, is your audience should not know from your work your voting preference. The audience should not know who you vote for. And your work has to rise above the noise of political polarization. It's not easy. It's not easy at a time when the journalist fraternity is othered. It is treated as the adversary. It is made the enemy. It is, as Rajdeep said, denied access. Often, there are things that I used to love reporting on that I can't report on today because access has shrunk. Access to even so many things that we took for normal. I'm not talking about politicians or political access. Other kinds of access has shrunk. What a PIB means today has completely altered. Some of you who have a PIB card will know that. But yet, nothing can change. No AI, no deep fakes, no fake news, no disruptive technology. Nothing can nothing can ever change the relationship that you choose to build between yourself and people. And if people start seeing you as somebody who's willing to tell the stories that other people aren't willing to tell, as somebody who's willing to bring the margins to the center, and as somebody who is prepared to remain civil but strong in the face of provocation, in the end, they may not like you, but they'll respect you. And I believe that the biggest mistake that journalists have made is to seek being liked instead of being respected. So may we embark on a new journey of journalism where we look for grudging respect above easy likes. Thank you very much.